On Politics East Midlands, elections on the way, who'll get your vote? And what to do about speeding mobility scooters? Hello, I'm Geeta Pense. Coming up this morning, the month-long wait to see a GP. One part of the region has the worst figures in the country. And the Mansfield man who wants to see speed limit signs put up to slow down mobility scooters.
They're going too fast. They're driving recklessly. They're weaving in and out, folks, which you shouldn't do. If a child runs out in front of you, then it'll be too late.
Welcome to the show. My guests today are all fresh from the campaign trail as they limber up for the local elections. Toby Perkins is the Labour MP for Chesterfield, and next to him we have Emily Fedorovich, who is a Green Party councillor in Northamptonshire, and Tom Randall is the Conservative MP for Gedling. Welcome to you all. Now, we have a full set of guests and lots to get through, so let's get started straight away and talk about health services. Labour's Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, was on Toby Perkins' patch in Chesterfield this week, highlighting the issue of long waits for an appointment to see a GP. Now, according to the Labour Party, almost 14% of patients in the town have to wait over a month to see their doctor, the worst figures in the country. Let me start with you, Toby. Is there a part of this that is essentially party politics? Because these long waits are typically for routine issues that can wait, and health practices have told us that if it is serious, they will see you quickly.
Well, there's people right across Chesterfield that are having massive issues trying to get urgent doctor's appointments as well. So that's one statistic in terms of how long people are waiting. There's very little that you contact your doctor about that actually that you want a month's wait for. But, you know, you look at people, the 8:30 scramble to try and get an appointment, that's commonplace for most of my constituents. But I know this isn't just a Chesterfield issue. Right across the country, we've seen massive problems with GP access. That the government have lost control in terms of the number of people who are training. We're losing huge numbers of GPs to Canada and Australia, and it's a massive problem for my constituents.
Let me bring you in, Tom, there. The government's lost control. I mean, we can't deny the fact that many health staff have been striking recently. We have shortages of doctors and nurses. Does the Conservative Party have a plan?
Yes, and look, Toby's completely right. This is a widespread issue, not just in Chesterfield. I mean, as a constituency MP, I get people who write to me with concerns about accessing GP surgeries. And, you know, post-COVID, a lot of demands on the system, and that is something we need to resolve. We need to get it sorted out. And, yeah, a month-long wait isn't acceptable. The government said it wants to make sure that everyone can get an appointment within a fortnight, with urgent cases seen the same day. I mean, what has happened is there has been a lot of money has gone into this over the last couple of years, I think about £2 billion nationally. The government said it's going to put in another £1.5 billion in the next, you know, between now and next year. So there is money going into this to try and free up that capacity. Okay. So that's the sort of funding issue. I think the other issue that can be done is some practical issues as well, in terms of freeing up GP time. I know that some work has gone in to try and make more appointments available, for example, by allowing pharmacists to do some prescribing, bringing in other professionals.
So some suggestions there. Emily, let me bring you in, because I think for a lot of people, when they hear the Green Party, they associate your party with environmental issues. Yeah. What is the Green Party stance on healthcare?
So, I mean, the big thing around this is essentially what we're saying is we will fund the NHS how it was properly meant to be funded. So, in essence, I mean, a lot of these things, obviously, like the thing that Wes has come forward with, obviously that's one potential way of increasing the capacity. That's obviously one thing. We've got some funding that's coming down the line, but doctors are saying this is too little too late. This has been chronically underfunded for some time now, and I think that's where the crux of our issue is. I mean, if you look at we know that well-funded health, like national health services and sort of public health services work in other areas like Germany. We see it work, Finland, the Netherlands. It's working where it's well funded.
OK, all right. Well, so let me just go back to you, Toby, because you mentioned staff shortages, and I know that Labour say they'll double the number of medical school places and train 10,000 more nurses and midwives. But one of the issues, well, probably the core issue that healthcare workers are striking over is pay. And if you don't pay them more, won't you have a problem recruiting them?
Well, absolutely. I think that why are we training up so many doctors who then end up going to Canada and Australia and other places? Why have we got the shortages that we've got? And pay is a part of that. It's also about the whole way that people in our health service have been treated. I think that the government have sort of been at pains almost to drive doctors, junior doctors and nurses away with the sort of rhetoric towards some of our staff. So I think that there's a big morale problem. I think there's a big pay problem. That then leads to overcrowding and overworking. That then drives staff away, which exacerbates all those problems. OK,
we are going to have to move on, but Tom, will you pay them more?
Well, look, there is an ongoing negotiation about a lot of NHS pay at the moment. That's not quite resolved yet, which is unfortunate. Junior doctors are asking a 35% pay rise. I don't think that's going to be possible within the sort of funding envelope at the moment. But look, there are steps that we can take to try and improve retention in the workforce. So, for example, one of the big issues that's been facing more senior doctors at the end of the profession was their pension arrangements. Well, that was actually driving them out because it wasn't in their interest.
OK, fine. But on the question that I asked you, I think there's no answer there on pay. We're going to have to move on. You're watching Politics East Midlands, still to come.
The battle for your vote. We look at what's at stake in Nottingham as the local elections loom across the region, and the campaigner who wants a crackdown on speeding mobility scooters.
First, though, the Bishop of Leicester has entered the political arena in the row over what to do about asylum seekers. Bishop Martin Snow has written to all of the MPs in Leicestershire to share his concerns about government plans to move them into disused military barracks and ships. He told me he wants politicians to put themselves in the shoes of people fleeing their own countries.
So it came about first and foremost because of a visit that I did to a hotel in rural Leicestershire, where about 100 families are being housed at the moment, all asylum seekers. So in talking with them, I was deeply moved by their very simple desire to want to be able to contribute to society here. But then that came at just at the same time as the government was announcing then a move to use disused airfields or even a barge off the coast somewhere to house people. And I was just so struck by the thought that that would be so isolating for these people.
What is it you're asking MPs to do?
So I want them to raise with government ministers in particular, first and foremost, the fact that it takes so long for asylum applications to be heard. So people who come to this country, apply for asylum to be able to stay in this country, who are housed in these hotels, often have to spend a year or maybe more while they wait for a decision on their asylum application. And it's simply too long.
You are known as a religious leader. Some might say it's not your place to wade into politics and government policy.
I think it's absolutely right. First and foremost, as a member of the House of Lords, obviously, I've contributed to debates within the House of Lords on that. I think as a religious leader, we bring a particular sort of moral dimension to that, if you like. So being able to simply remind people that these are human beings, that they have the same desires and hopes and longings that every one of us has.
The Bishop of Leicester speaking with me there. Tom, let me go to you first, because he is strongly criticising government policy when it comes to processing asylum seeker applications, but also housing. And we know that at the moment, when it comes to those applications, they're at a record high. Is this a system that is fit for purpose?
Well, it's a system that needs to be improved, and I accept some of the diagnoses of the problem that the Bishop of Leicester has outlined there, that we do need to be processing cases more quickly than we are at the moment. I think where his thinking is perhaps a little bit more woolly, if I may say so, is that he's focusing on that, but that, we have at the moment, and what's arisen over the last couple of years, is a large group of people. There's been an increase in the number of migrants across the Channel in particular, who come here, who require processing. That number has increased. which I think is therefore it's right that we put deterrents in place, but also we need to process that amount of people here at the moment. And while they've been housed in hotels, for example, that's been costing the taxpayer £7 million a day. That's a lot of money. I think it is reasonable for the government to try and find a solution to this, which is at a more reasonable cost to the taxpayer, and doesn't have some of the negative effects that housing in hotels does. You know, for example, if you've put someone in a hotel, that's going to have a negative impact, say, on perhaps the visitor economy, where there's less hotel space available for visitors. So trying to sort of deal with this in a compassionate way, and we do have to be, doing it in a compassionate way, but I think doing it in a cost-effective way to the taxpayer is the right thing to do.
OK, well, Toby, there is this balance, as Tom is saying, around compassion and being cost-effective, in Tom's words, and finding alternative housing, for example, the government says is going to cost less, and it is taxpayer money after all.
Well, I mean, the point, I think the issue around the processing speed is the key one here. I went to meet some of the asylum seekers that are in a hotel in Chesterfield, and all of those have been there for over 9 months. Not one of them has had their case processed. I think that the government's approach both lacks compassion, the sort of this nonsense about flying them over to Rwanda and then leaving them waiting years there while we failed to process them, but also lacks economic sense, because actually we've already spent tens of millions on this Rwanda scheme. Apparently commitments that Rwandans can come instead of the other asylum seekers that we're sending away. And it's all just a culture war instead of the fundamental job of government getting on and sorting it out, which is processing the people's claims, allowing those to stay who are entitled to stay, and removing those who aren't.
OK, well, Emily, I have to admit, you've been nodding quite a bit there. So
Yeah,
what would you say, with the Green Party's approach?
I mean, not really as a Green Party per se, but more of as a personal perspective. I mean, I actually chaired the Kettering Refugee Assistance Charity, our local group, for some time, and we've been working with the asylum seekers based in the heart of our town, and this is just not what we're sort of seeing. In terms of the compassion, we talked about the sort of the deterrent of this being a deterrent, and I actually don't think that's the case at all. When people are crossing over, they're fleeing for their lives. So they will do anything. So these sort of boats or utilising some of these sort of like cheaper alternatives, it's about cost. We're looking at cost here. It isn't that compassionate element, and it is about the applications and speeding that up and closing that cost gap there.
Closing that gap. Well, let me take it back to you, Tom, because what the Bishop did say was that, what he's trying to do is put a spotlight on the humanity. Do you think some of the rhetoric that the government perhaps is using, the language, is maybe fuelling a sense of fear around asylum seekers?
Well, I think there's a widespread public concern about what's been happening over the last year, and I think what politicians have said reflects that widespread public concern. And I think there is, and I certainly find it when I speak to some of constituents, there's a large body of people who see this as an issue that needs to be resolved and needs to be resolved promptly. There is an onus on government to do that. And it needs to do it, yes, in a fair and compassionate way, but in a way which is decisive and is at good value to the taxpayer. And I think that is what the measures that are being introduced in the illegal migration bill, which is going through the House of Parliament at the moment, will seek to do that. We've got, for example, returns agreements, which will help. We've had, for example, a lot of the small boat issues, a good chunk of them have been from Albania. They've been economic migrants. Now, if you have economic migrants going through the asylum system, that's less time to focus on the genuine cases.
Okay.
So trying to deter some of those cases, I think, is the right thing to do, so that you can focus on those in genuine need.
We have run out of time, but thank you to all on that issue. Now, if you've been on social media recently, you might have noticed that all of the political parties are leafleting, knocking on doors, and apparently getting a fantastic welcome on the doorstep. Yes, elections are in the air, and on the 4th of May, they'll be voting in all of our district and borough councils, as well as elections to choose councillors in Derby, Leicester and Nottingham, and to elect a mayor in Leicester and Mansfield. Hugh Caswell's been taking a closer look at the battle for votes in Nottingham.
For the Labour Party, Nottingham is a stronghold. They won 50 out of 55 seats on the City Council at the last time of asking, but the 4 years since have been a rough ride. The collapse of council-owned Robin Hood Energy in 2019 and subsequent loss of millions of pounds was the first in a line of high-profile financial failings and political embarrassments. Some, the Labour-run administration, have been able to argue were out of their hands. Others, they haven't. Given the number of mistakes there have been, how can people trust you to run the city for another 4 years?
There certainly have been mistakes that we've made. There have been circumstances that have not been of our making that have made life difficult. But I think people will see that Nottingham has councillors who are committed to the city and are committed to making improvements.
The Conservatives have the second most candidates, but have had their own trouble locally. After a row over selections, their only 2 current councillors are standing against them as independents. Nottingham Conservatives are in a mess, aren't they?
Not at all. We've got some really, really good candidates. We've got a very thorough selection procedure. It's a national procedure we use throughout the country. It's fair, it's democratic. Those 2 councillors, they didn't come through it. We've got other candidates who are really, really good, and we believe they will take the fight to Labour.
At the last election, the Nottingham Independents became the official opposition, taking 3 seats. But like other small parties, they have one big problem on the doorstep. People don't know what you stand for, do they?
I think merely through our actions within the communities they'll see what we stand for, because we've had a great impact in Clifton since we've been elected. We work in the community, they see us on a daily basis, so they realise that we're community people working in the communities.
The Lib Dems haven't won a seat in Nottingham in 16 years. The Greens never have. Both are standing candidates in fewer than half the seats available. It is mathematically impossible for you to end up in overall control. Your own manifesto talks about being in opposition. People don't vote for councillors to be in opposition, do they?
People vote for councillors to get things done in their local area. So whether it's potholes or whether it's opening the gates of the castle, if you want your views represented, then you have to vote to have your views represented. And that's where the Liberal Democrats come in the City of Nottingham.
Nottingham City Council has been dominated by the Labour Party for too long, and they badly need a strong opposition to hold them to account. We support quite a lot of what Nottingham City Council does, but they've got too much of a monopoly on power.
It would take a huge swing for Labour to lose control of Nottingham City Council, but after spending much of the last 4 years manning the defences, will it remain a fortress?
And you can get a full list of the candidates standing where you live in your area on your local council's website. Lots to talk about here. Let me start with you, Emily, because in a way you summed up perhaps the challenge facing people that might want to vote for the Greens, because here in this region, traditionally it's a fight between the Conservatives and Labour. So is a vote for the Green Party essentially a wasted vote?
Well, I mean, absolutely not. I mean, obviously I would say that, but I mean, ultimately the big thing is this is a stronghold for Labour, but the big thing with somewhere like that is you need a strong opposition. And we have had some mistakes, as we've seen, but that's where a strong opposition, essentially where the Greens could come in as that sort of critical friend to support and make sure that we're in a very strong position. But the other side of that is as well as opposition, as individual councillors, we can do so much good. We're not sort of like hemmed in by sort of party politics. We're really there for the people, and that's a bit like sort of an independent. The smaller parties can do that for the people.
OK, and Toby, Labour has an uphill battle, don't you, to regain so many of the Conservative seats that you lost?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a great opportunity for us. I think across the region, the May 2019 elections were actually quite a lot better than the December 2019 ones. So we've got Labour councillors in an area like Gedling, like Bassett Law, that subsequently got Conservative MPs. But it'll be really important for us to show that we have made progress back in seats that we're hoping to win at the general election, but also to hopefully see a vote of confidence in some of those really good Labour councils across the East Midlands that are in power. OK,
and Tom, you know, national politics do play a part in the way the general public vote, whether that be national or local. And of course, we saw Dominic Raab resign and an independent inquiry upheld some allegations of bullying. What's your reaction to that and the role that might play?
Well, look, yeah. it is national politics is always in people's minds and will affect it. At the time that we're filming this, that report has just come out, and Adam Tolley does say that you should read the whole report, which I haven't yet had an opportunity to do. So I'll be reading that in due course. But look, local elections are about your local council. You know, are they cleaning your streets? Are they emptying your bins? And that's, you know, important stuff. And that's what your councillors are elected to get a grip on. So my view is that, you know, Conservative councils do deliver good quality public services at a decent cost. Council tax bills are about £70 cheaper under a Conservative council than a Labour one, and I think that is, you know, whether your bins are going to be empty, whether your streets are going to be swept, is the kind of stuff that people should be addressing when they're going to vote.
OK, what would you say to that?
Election.
You know, voting Conservative means you're voting for financial solvency.
Well, I mean, there's actually people after this programme want to go onto the Fact Check website. Fact Check did a thing about this council tax bills, actually found the council tax bills across the piece were lower in Labour authorities. So actually you do get better value under Labour councils. Don't take my or the other politicians' word for it, but Fact Check are an independent organisation who prove that point. But I think it is, when you have local elections, I've been a local councillor myself, you know that the national picture is always going to be there as well. Tom's right to say people are going to be voting for their local councillors, and good local councillors can make a difference. But they will also be wanting to send a message to Rishi Sunak, to Keir Starmer and to the rest of the politicians. And we know the day after polling day, those politicians will be on our TV screens telling us what the results mean. And if you want the government to change direction, then they need to send the Conservatives a message they can't ignore. OK,
well, let me bring you in, Emily, because, you know, with the Green Party, you know, where are you targeting in the East Midlands? Where do you think you might make a breakthrough?
Yeah, I mean, Nottingham's obviously quite a big sort of area for us. We don't have anything going on in North Northampton right at the moment. But yeah, I mean, sort of other areas in the East Midlands as well. Trying to remember off the top of my head. But yeah, we're targeting a few different areas. I mean, because we're Greens, we're a lot smaller, so we have to be a bit more targeted. But the key thing is really for the Greens is that we've got more people wanting to stand for us than ever before. And I think that's a real show of how much people really they want to stand for these values, but they also want, this is an opportunity for people to vote and share that strength of feeling. Again, like you say, this is a chance for them to show in sort of Downing Street the strength of feeling around this.
OK, I mean, Tom, are you worried about what the results might show, and, you know, if they don't go sort of the Conservatives' way, about what they're saying about national politics?
Well, look, I and every other Conservative activist I know will be fighting for every vote at this election, and we obviously never take that for granted. But look, there's a danger. If you want to send a message to government, you can do that. But if you've seen in your film The City of Nottingham, I've been on this programme lots of times, you know, criticising what I see as the very real failings with tens of millions of pounds of taxpayers' money lost in the City of Nottingham. You can send that message to Rishi Sunak if you want, but it would mean that you're stuck with that Labour council, which is failing. So, you know, there are consequences to doing that, and I wouldn't want people to be stuck with a failing Labour council when they could be getting a good Conservative council, which delivering high-quality public services at a good, decent price to the taxpayer.
I mean, the council, we heard there in the clip with the leader of Nottingham City Council currently, saying that they have made mistakes, but there are also outside forces at play too.
Well, I think when they lost £40 million on Robin Hood Energy, when they paid money that was allocated to housing into the wrong bank account, I think there was a good degree of, you know, their own responsibility for that, and they should face up to their own actions.
OK,
consequences of that.
Emily,
if I could just come in on that, I actually do think, whilst they have been ultimately, whilst Nottingham have had a couple of issues, I think there's something that a lot of councils across the country are looking to for striving forward, for doing bold things. Their Nottingham parking levy is something that we're trying to push through in Northamptonshire. But yeah, those sorts of innovative things, they don't always work.
Well, there is support there for Labour there. Labour, I mean, Toby, sorry, what would your predictions be briefly? How do you see things playing out on the
floor? I think that we will see Labour continuing to make progress. I mean, we're conscious that the May 2019 elections were better than the December ones, but we also see we want to show that the Labour Party is ready to govern, that we're winning right across the region. Good Labour councils getting elected on May the 4th.
OK, well, we are going to move on, but of course we will be covering all of this as the weeks go. Well, it's not that long at all, actually, May the 4th. Now, on to our final story. The Mansfield man who's campaigning to stop speeding mobility scooter drivers. Pete Henson uses a scooter himself, but says some of his fellow riders are speeding through the town. He wants 4 miles per hour signs to be put up to remind people of the speed limit and to encourage them to slow down.
A trip into Mansfield town centre made easier. Pete Henson has been using a mobility scooter for over a decade and he says it's a lifeline. However, he's become fed up with some scooter users who appear to be breaking the legal speed limit.
I just want them to slow down. I just want them all to slow down. Think of the public safety. Somebody's only got to walk outside of a door, they're going to get run over. If a child runs out in front of you, your reaction aren't quick enough to stop in time, then it'll be too late.
Mobility scooters and powered wheelchairs can legally travel at a maximum of 4 miles per hour on footpaths and in pedestrianised areas. But what Pete says he's seeing is some users driving at twice that speed in and around Mansfield. Pete's not the only one concerned. Paul Bishop sells mobility scooters in the town and says there needs to be better awareness.
We advise at point of sale that an 8 mile an hour scooter should be driven at 4 mile an hour in town centres. Some people definitely ignore it and some people probably aren't aware of it. There'll be an accident eventually. And that's what Pete's trying to bring up. We're trying to stop that.
Pete is now calling for Nottinghamshire County Council to create speed limit signs for the town.
It's the safety of the public. I want to get the signs up, then we can get someone to enforce the law to stop them going too fast. If we can get the signs up, folks might just see them and think, oh, it's only 4 miles an hour.
Nottinghamshire County Council say they rely on road users, including those using mobility scooters, to adhere to the speed limit for their vehicle and show respect to other road users. Pete hopes raising awareness will make a difference.
Pete Henson there talking about his concerns. And on this show, we've also reported in the past about people worried about e-scooters, about e-bikes. Is there a wider kind of issue here about how we kind of ensure everyone feels safe on footpaths? I mean, what do you think, Tom?
Absolutely. You know, it's a shared space, and I think people need to be considerate. I know, for example, in Nottingham, there's been nationally actually, there's been an e-scooter trial, which has now just been extended till May 24. I think we need to sort of see how that works. But certainly that people are living longer with conditions, which means we're probably going to see more mobility scooters on the streets rather than fewer. So I think we've got to really sort of rethink as a society is how we adapt and share that space in a considerate way.
Toby, what would you say?
Yeah, well, Pete's doing his own one-man campaign there to raise awareness, and I think that's useful. I think that e-scooters, definitely do have a role, but in terms of the mobility scooters, we didn't get to see anyone hurtling through Mansfield on those clips, but you do get people who move a bit too fast, and everyone needs to be aware.
And Emily, Pete, clearly, he's very passionate. He's trying to raise awareness.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we talk about shared space, but it's putting different people at risk. So we're either sharing with pedestrians and putting them at risk, like in this sort of instance, or on the roads where you've got potholes and some you're taking your life in your own hands in some instances. So, I mean, I think really we need some designated routes, and that's the key thing. And we're not seeing funding come through for that. We've got a local walking, cycling infrastructure plan, but that's still not, the funding's not coming through.
OK, well, I feel like we could probably talk more on this, but we have run out of time. That's all we have time for this week. Thank you to my guests, Tom Randall, Toby Perkins and Emily Fedorovich. Have a great Sunday, whatever you're up to. From all the team here, goodbye.